Thank you, Susan. So I like to start with just a little bit about me. As I said, I am Chris Higgins. I work for CCS Technology Group. My title most days is Cybersecurity Analyst and Solution Architect. So I spend most of my day going into businesses, helping them figure out what they have going on from both a business standpoint as well as a security standpoint, help them build a plan to get them from point A to point B, whether that's just getting their computers networked correctly, or if you want to do work with the Department of Defense and have to get all your compliance ducks in a row. I have a bachelor's in business information systems. I've been doing IT consulting since 2006. So I need to update my certifications because, yes, while I am a CCP, which is a CMMC certified professional, that's for the Department of Defense supply chain, but I now hold two certifications in AI, one in the security around AI and one on the use of AI. I do consulting in the areas of cybersecurity, compliance, CMMC, NIST, ERP, leveraging technology and growth, and a whole bunch of other acronyms that our industry likes to live with. And the average person doesn't know what they all mean. But so on with our program. So today we're gonna start by talking a little bit about the threat landscape, where we are today, current common attacks, the how and the why. Because when I talk to people all the time, I'm like, I hear all this stuff happen, but why do they do it? And so we're gonna kind of talk through that. And then how to protect yourself, right? So once you understand what it is, then you can, figure out how to protect yourself. Um, the landscape today. So year after year, Forbes puts out a study and this number hasn't changed much, but 57% of businesses think they won't be targeted, which is completely not true. So over 75% of all cybersecurity techs are in small businesses. So in the IT world, that is computer networks from 1 to 150 employees. So that's a pretty big span. But the truth is that the big enterprise organizations, they've got their ducks in a row. They've got their front door locked, their back door locked, and they're much harder to get into. So it takes a lot more time and resources to get in and breach one of those. So they're looking at smaller targets, right? So they can get in faster, get in and out. Yeah. So I think the 43% of all data breaches. So that's a 2023 number. The 2024 number is very similar. But we only see that going up in the small business space. So we talked a little bit about AI, but AI is also a cause for a bunch of new cyber attacks. While us helping businesses do cybersecurity protection, we're leveraging AI to help block new, faster attacks. But the hackers and the bad actors out there, they're also using AI to produce more content faster. So when I first started doing IT consulting in 2006, the average life of a virus or malware was about 30 days. So over 30 days, they would change it enough that it would get around the antivirus. Pre-COVID, that number was down to 7 days. So now today, it's about 4 hours. So with leveraging AI, instead of creating one email, they can make 30. Instead of making one fake website, they can make 10 in the same amount of time. Not to mention, those emails don't have as bad of spelling errors. They have better linguistics and tone. They're using urgency much better. So you definitely have to be careful, more careful than you used to be. But also on the use of AI, Susan mentioned ChatGPT. So there's been many cases already where employees of companies have used ChatGPT and they put in either proprietary, sensitive, or protected data. So protected data would be something that's legally obligated to protect and you're not supposed to share with anybody. That could be your social security number, your banking information, your healthcare information, anything like that. But people have plugged information into tools like ChatGPT that shouldn't have been shared, and businesses are getting fined, employees are losing their jobs, stuff like that. But also on the proprietary side, if you make some special chemical and you're asking ChatGPT how to make it for less money or faster or deal with this problem, and you put formulas or information about how you do that, now ChatGPT can share that information with others, right? So whether it's the secret sauce at the business or customer lists or any of that kind of information that would be dire to your business, you want to make sure your employees know what they can use AI for and what they can't. Because in my AI presentation, there's a stat out there that 78% of employees are using AI and the company doesn't know. So even if you haven't invested in AI, people are trying free versions or paying for it on their own to make their lives easier. So you definitely want to have a policy out there to make sure people know what they should and shouldn't use. So most of the time when you come to a presentation like this, it is a list of definitions of a whole bunch of different types of attacks. And I don't do it that way because I like to think of all the different attacks out there. You know, you hear ransom and phishing and smishing and all these different terms. um, it doesn't really matter what the definitions are. Just know that they're tools in a toolbox, right? So when somebody's going to build your house, sometimes they use a hammer, sometimes they use a saw. At the end of the day, they're building a house, right? So the individual tools don't really matter. A tool might help them do it differently or faster, but at the end of the day, they're trying to build a house. We're going to talk about just a couple of these. So it's only like 5 out of the hundreds of different terms out there, just so you have a general overview as to what some of these things are. Phishing is sending some sort of message where they're trying to get more information from you. So a lot of times you see these, they're, the eBay telling you your account's been breached, you need to get in and change your password, right? So it's going to send you to a website that's not really eBay. Um, and they want you to log in. Well, now they've captured your username and password. So there's lots of variants of this. So they do it by text. It's called smishing. They're doing it Teams now. It could be phone, right? Somebody could call you and say they need some information from you. Whether it's they say you're from your bank or your homeowners association or all sorts of different variables. Fraud, it's the simplest thing out there. It's usually a component in almost every breach or attack. And that is that they're trying to get money from you, right? So this could be anything from it looks like an email from your boss. He wants you to go buy gift cards and send them to somebody. It could be make a donation to this fake charity, right? They're trying to get your credit card number and charge your card, right? Whether that is for the actual amount to a fraudulent company, right? So they're asking for $50 and they take $50. On the extreme, they get your credit card number and they could charge you $1,000 or $10,000. And while we can all deal with chargebacks and that headache and all that stuff, most of the time they're going and buying physical products that they can get out of the store before the chargeback happens, and then they sell them. So just like retail theft, they're not using the bottles of champagne they stole, they're selling them, right? Email account takeover. So this is usually a big part of both phishing and fraud because people will impersonate you. So if your email password isn't strong enough or you're not using multi-factor authentication, right? Somebody gets into your email account. Now they're sending email as you that actually comes from your mailbox. So there's also spoofing, which is they send email that looks like you, but it doesn't actually come from your mailbox. So there are different ways that you have to protect yourself against those things. Ransom is usually what we all hear about in the news. So whether it's Keystone Pipeline or not the Keystone Pipeline, but the oil pipeline in the Carolinas that got shut down to Lori Children's Hospital was shut down for over 30 days. Those were all ransomware. So most of the time, the stats show that by the time they issue ransom, it's the last thing that they do. So once they get into your network, they're going to look around, they're going to find all of the valuable information they can. And when they're all done, they're going to go, give us a couple $1,000,000. So a lot of people think, oh, my company's so small, I'm not going to be able to pay it. They're not going to come after me. But the interesting thing is, so there was, I think it was 2022, 37 municipalities in Texas were all ransomed on the same day. And they were all ransomed for different dollar amounts. So the hackers understand if they ask for too much money, you can't pay. So the average instance there, they were on their network for over 90 days, most of them over 200 days. They figured out how much everybody had for cyber insurance and then asked for the amount of money right below that threshold. so that they could get paid quickly. So there was ransoms everywhere, anywhere from $100,000 to $5, $6, $7 million. So bad actors will do the same thing. If you only have 10 employees and do $1 million a year, they'll ransom you for $50,000 or $5,000, right? So if you're a multi-million dollar organization, they're going to ask for a lot more, but they're going to figure that out. So the size of your business, the pain is only variable by the size of your business, right? So if you're the day before payroll and somebody emptied your bank account, that would suck, right? And so that's what we're trying to prevent. And then malware is the overarching, everything's included in malware. So you'll hear that term all the time. Malware is any piece of software that is doing something without your knowledge that is unintended for you. So those are the high levels of things so that we can kind of talk about some of the types. So social engineering is really, really popular right now. So we all have tons of information about us out there on the web. So whether it's your LinkedIn profile, your Facebook account, your friends, your everything out there about you is online. And with the use of AI, they can aggregate tons of data. They'll figure out what your hobbies are, what if the business is going to an event or a trade show, and then they'll use those events and hobbies and stuff against you. So it's really important for a bad actor to do something when it's timely and it looks like it's coming from the real place, right? So me and my kids, we do RC cars. It's more likely that I would get a thing saying register for a giveaway of a free RC car, right? Trying to get my email address or some contact information from me, maybe get me to set up an account, create a password, stuff like that. Whereas somebody that might be a cross-country runner might get something about a running event. So they can aggregate all this amount of data about you really, really fast now using AI. And they'll also find events out about you. So a great example, a person got an email from a friend 2 weeks after they went to their wedding, right? So the person that was getting married's account got breached. They read all their emails. They saw all their contact list. They saw emails going back and forth about a big event, the wedding. So 2 weeks after the event, everybody in his contact list got sent an email with what looked like to be a Dropbox link saying, "Hey, here's the wedding photos." Right? So it was timely. It came from a trusted source, right? The email had no spelling errors. It looked like a legit Dropbox link, but instead of going to Dropbox, it downloaded a virus onto everybody's machine. Really common scenarios. So most things today start with phishing. They're going to send out millions of emails. It's free, right? So they create free accounts on Comcast and any of these free services. Sometimes they're spoofing a domain name that looks like yours, but they're sending out large amounts of email and trying to get a response, right? So I find it really interesting. We safe and fake fish customers to see who falls for stuff. And it's really interesting to see who falls for what. So an executive and owner like that is more likely to fall for something like a Better Business Bureau review, whereas a entry-level accounts payable person is more likely to fall for a UPS shipping link, stuff like that. But whatever it is, it's going to send you to something to try and get you to log in 9 times out of 10. So this might look like a Facebook login, but they just want you to enter a username and a password. It's usually your email address, right? And then a password. So the problem with this is statistics show that the average user uses their primary password over 150 times at 150 different sites before they create a variation of it. So what ends up happening is they don't really care about your Facebook account. They're going to get that username and password combination, and they're going to try it on every bank, every email server, every other social media site, so that they can get more information about you, drain your bank accounts, or do something like that, right? So once you've logged in, so they're going to the bank, they're going to send mail as you. So if they can get in to your mail server, then they're going to try and spread and get to all your friends. They're going to go and look at all your social media accounts. So because the more information they can find out about you and your friends, the better they can reach other people. And then they're literally going to try that username and password on thousands of websites to see if they can gain more information. So little did you know, though, not only clicking that link did you send them your username and password, you just installed a piece of malware on your computer. So when malware first came out, you hear all the stories about viruses and it made my computer melt down, or my computer was being slow. And that's how I knew. Well, those days are gone. So today they want to sit in the background. They don't want you to know that they're there, right? So they might use your computer to send out thousands of more emails, but they'll know to do it when you're sleeping. Or they're going to put a keylogger onto your machine so they could see every word you type. They're going to it's going to try and spread and find other devices on your network. And then what the keylogger does is it literally records every keystroke you make. So, but then they have a list of alerts. So on that alert, maybe they have a list of 10,000 bank websites. And if you type in www.bank1.com, it's going to send them the next 100 keystrokes that you type. Because most likely that's your username and your password, right? So they can differentiate that. They try it. Now they're in your bank. They wire all your money away and you're in really deep trouble. So, but they could also do that to get into your QuickBooks account, your other social media accounts, right? And everything they're doing is to try and spread. And then once they have more usernames and passwords, they just go do it all again, right? So they're going to sit on your computer. They find more username and passwords that you use, and they're going to try them on every bank and every email server and every social media account and just try and spread. The more information they get, the worse off it is for you. And I do want to say that people use this whole process used to take days, right? So like you would get something, my computer would do something weird, and then maybe the next day you'd get an alert from your bank for suspicious logins, and then tomorrow you'd get something from Facebook. Literally now this happens in 5 minutes. So it's 100% automated. Once you fill that out, it's just going to go and it's going to try and do all these things. And within minutes, your identity can be stolen. Titles can be changed on homes. It can get really bad. So everybody asks about the why. It's all about the money. So it wouldn't happen if there wasn't something in it for them. It's no different than the Saudi prince that wants to give you $1 million if you just open a bank account with $1,000, right? So it's about getting money. And if they send out 1 million emails and 1% of them fall for it, they just made multiple millions of dollars. It's pretty crazy how fast they can drain bank accounts and take money from people. So account takeover is also a big piece of this. We've kind of talked about it, but whether you have Gmail, G Suite for a business, 365, or even if you're just using Comcast or whatever, the goal is that they want to get into your email account. So all of those websites and mail services are accessible on the web. So all you need is a username and password to get in. So they might have phished you to try and get that username and password. They might do what's called a brute force password hack, right? Which is they're going to just try random passwords from a most common password list that they've generated. And they're going to just keep trying it. Good services will, after 3, 4, 5 attempts would block them, but they know, well, they're going to wait 4 hours and they'll keep doing it again. So you'll just keep seeing this. So it's really important to have multi-factor authentication enabled on as many accounts as you can, especially your email account. Because once they get in, they're going to send email as you. So on the business side, I worked on a case with a company that their vendor email got breached. The bad actor got into their vendor's email, figured out what user was that sent invoices in their organization, and in my client's organization, the emails were received by. So accounts payable. So then they sent emails only to people that received invoices with new ACH information saying, hey, we're changing our bank. Please pay any open invoices here instead of there. So nobody was the wiser. It went on a couple weeks. The other companies didn't know it was happening until they started seeing customers that were going 30, 60, 90 days past due. They called our client and said, hey, usually pretty good paying your bills. And they're like, we paid all those. Comes to find out, the accounts payable clerk did exactly what the email said. They trusted it and they updated the banking information, and over 3 invoices paid a bad actor over $60,000. So that's a really bad day. So depending on the transaction volume and the size of the purchases, I mean, I've seen that be hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's really important that you teach all of your employees, especially anybody that has access to banking information, to make sure if they get an email like that, that they're calling the vendor and verifying. Because in this case, I was brought into this customer to help figure out how this happened. And turns out my client's cybersecurity insurance didn't pay out because the human made the change. If the hacker got into their account, into their system and made the change on their own, their cybersecurity insurance would have paid out. Now, luckily, because we proved that the email came from the vendor's legitimate email account and it was their fault, that company's cybersecurity insurance paid. Now, luckily, to retain a good relationship with our client, they let our client off the hook for the $60,000 because they got that money from their insurance company. However, legally, they weren't responsible to do that or weren't obligated to do that. So they could have taken the $60,000 from the insurance company and still asked my customer to pay the bill. So some really bad scenarios. And I always like to look at it as, what if this happened the day before payday, right? All of a sudden you didn't have enough money to pay your employees because somebody just drained your bank account. And that's usually what happens. So the bad actors, they understand urgency. So they're going to find out when payday is and when, big events are, and they're going to do it when it's the most painful for you, because then you're more likely to pay so that you can get out of the hole. Passwords are the biggest risk you have out there. So as I mentioned before, most people use passwords over 150 times before they change them. They also tend to make variants of them, right? So I might go from password 1 and then password 2025. And the bad actors have figured out all these patterns, and they've actually started using AI to either aggregate a bunch of your different passwords that they've stolen to guess what the next password you're going to do is, or they can do that with just a single password. They'll try the most common permutations of those things, doing things like letter substitution. So they change an at for an A or a 1 for an exclamation point. And that's just not a good strategy anymore because the bad actors know how to do that. So I tell people all the time that passwords should be long, unique, and complex. So long is 14 characters or more always. Think passphrase instead of password. Complex is using uppers, lowers, numbers, special characters. However, as I mentioned before, character substitution just doesn't work. They know that you're going to swap an A for an at, and they're going to try that. They're also going to know that people have a tendency to change something at the end, or the first letter is always capitalized. So make sure it's truly unique. I'm a huge fan of password wallets. So there's a bunch of them out there, both free and pay. It's really the only way that you can do unique passwords everywhere. I haven't created a password in probably 2 years. So I was definitely one of those don't put all your eggs in one basket type of people. I did a bunch of research, and most of the top players out there, they have really good security, and you're way more likely to get breached for having a weak password than it is for somebody to get into there and then get your password. So out of all the breaches out there, nobody has ever gotten a password out of a password vault or a password wallet. I would definitely go that way. Oh, two-factor, we've talked a little bit about tonight, right? So that's where when you log in, you're either going to have to use an authenticator app, maybe send you a text message with code, stuff like that. Rotate passwords. So especially anything that's important to you, like your banks or financial stuff, don't keep those passwords for more than 120 days. So you want to limit the amount of time that those passwords are out there to get bought and sold and get into your account. And then unique for every site. I guess I've been rolling. If anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in there. You mentioned cyber insurance. What does it cover? So cyber insurance is kind of the wild, wild west right now. So it's actually not very regulated, and there really I will start by saying I am not an insurance agent and I'm not giving insurance advice, but there is really two categories of cyber insurance. There is a rider. It is usually really inexpensive but has very limited coverage. um, and then there's a standalone policy. If anybody needs cyber insurance, I would only get a standalone policy. But inside of that, you definitely want to talk to your insurance provider because there is exclusions for different kinds of things. So some will pay ransom, some won't. Some will pay for like that scenario where a human made a mistake due to a bad actor, right? So employee errors and omissions is a separate line item, whether it covers lost income, so you couldn't work or bill or something. So there's 5 or 6 different categories as to what it will and will not cover. But the cyber analyst in me will tell you that just like it used to be for healthcare, they're going to look for any reason to not pay out. The claims are getting bigger, and the only thing that can happen is either rates are going to go through the roof or they got to start denying claims. So what does that mean? If you have a Windows 10 machine on your network, they're going to say you're not compliant with the policy. You have a Windows XP or a 7 machine, because their policy, I guarantee, will say that you have to maintain supported operating systems. You must have antivirus that's up to date. There is usually a long list of things that you have to be doing. And if any one of those things aren't actually happening, they're going to say that, kind of like healthcare, you used to have a pre-existing condition, right? They find a picture of you on Facebook that with a cigarette in your hand and you said you're a non-smoker, they're going to decline your cancer claim. So they're going to come in, they're going to investigate, and they're not really there to help you or to find the bad guy. They're there to find out if you did all the things that you said on your application and find a reason to not pay your claim. So it is really, really important to make sure you answer those questions correctly, as well as make sure you're doing your due diligence and understand what that is. For all of our customers, we do an annual cybersecurity application review. So where we actually go through, help them answer those questions on their application, and then make sure that any of the things we do say we did are actually getting done. Any other? Really rolling right along. So defense. So this is really, now we kind of know about all the bad guys out there, and it's just the tip of the iceberg as far as all the crazy things I've seen. But really wanting to get down to, stopping it from happening. So there's what's called NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technology. So in their CSF framework, which is the cybersecurity framework, they came up with these 5 pillars. So first, you need to identify your risks and be able to identify if something bad happens. So asset management, having a list of all your devices, right? Because we've all heard about the laptop that was left at the airport, right? So knowing where all your devices are and where all your data is really important. Governments, that's policies and procedures, right? So small businesses often don't have these, but I've mentioned a few things like you should have an EI policy. You should have a wire transfer policy. You should be training your employees on these things. And then risk assessment, where I spend most of my day. I go into businesses, we scan their network, we come up with all the bad devices, what is and isn't protected, and then come up with a risk management strategy from there. Protecting is a lot of the things that we all think about, right? So you need awareness and training, you need data security, endpoint security, antivirus, that kind of stuff, maintenance. So doing all your security updates, updating your applications, and then protective technology. So that's anything that's going to monitor or alert for bad actors. Detection. So this has gotten a lot harder. It We used to all have all of our data on our computer, and we could run a virus scan on our computer once a day or once a week or whatever and look for bad things. But now our data's in multiple different places. Do you see the defense strategy screen, Bob? Oh, so I'm on a defense strategy screen. Maybe Bob's screen's frozen. Janet or Susan, do you see defense strategies?
I do,
Yes,
yes.
yeah, I see defense strategies right now.
Okay.
Thank you, Chris. I will sign off and sign back in again. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure.
Good job. Thank you.
But we used to have all of our data in one place. It was really easy to see if something was changing with it. But now it's in a lot of different places. So not only do we have to run antivirus on your machine, but we also have to scan your 365 or your G Suite looking for anomalies. We're looking for anomalous logins attempts from unusual places, stuff like that. So respond is what's called right of boom. So after something bad happens, how do you react to it? So response planning, communications, who do you tell, who do you not? So maybe you got a big breach. Usually if you have cyber insurance, your first call is to your insurance company. So they are going to provide, as part of your cybersecurity insurance, an attorney and an assessor and a team that will help you decide. Sometimes you are legally obligated to notify the authorities, usually the FBI. Other times you are not. There is a big difference between a incident and a breach. Incident is usually somebody could have gotten in, but there's no evidence that anything was taken, whereas a breach is somebody actually got in, stole data, got information, spread, stuff like that. And there's drastic different rules and regulations as far as who you have to notify, both people that you might have gotten their data, right? You probably got something that your Visa, MasterCard was stolen, and they're going to give you monitoring and protection, right? So all those things are coming out of your cyber insurance fund. So analysis and then mitigation's actually towards the end, and people don't think about this. The IT guys, we'd like to just wipe everything clean and get you back running, but people don't realize that those devices might be considered evidence and you can't have them back. Depending on the size of your organization, that might mean you have to go and buy 30 new computers and a new server, and that server takes 2 weeks to get in, 3 days for it to get assembled and built, and then 3 more days to restore your stuff. You might be out weeks. And so if your organization's even larger, just imagine you have 150 computers, you have 12 servers. The amount of time it would take just to get 150 computers unboxed and back on somebody's desks, right? So you're talking manpower in days and time. So that's a lot of times when you hear that these things, it was weeks, it's because they have to get new equipment, right? It might be firewalls and switches and PCs and servers and all of it. And they might have a 3-person team, or they might be using an outsourced service like us. And it just takes time. After the boom and after you've recovered, you're going to kind of look like, how do we keep this from happening again? And then recovery planning, improvements, and communication again. So there'll be a lot of communication in this. So after the investigation is complete and you know what did or did not get stolen, so then you can start notifying people, which often also means you're getting a PR person. So you're getting somebody that's going to write very nice, apologetic information, only giving out the information that you have to, because not only did you lose all your data or somebody got in, but it's also going to hurt your company's reputation and potentially future sales and revenue and employees and all that fun stuff. So this is one of my free giveaways. So the QR code on here, and everybody will get these slides too. But so this is a 15 ways checklist of things that everybody should do to make sure they're protected. So The security assessment, like I mentioned, I do those all day long, usually take a couple hours. Email security, you need to have something that is blocking as much phishing as possible. It's not going to block it all, but you want to limit yours and your employees' exposure to fake email. Passwords, like I mentioned, long, strong, unique. Security awareness training. Almost every cybersecurity policy now requires you to do cybersecurity training for all your employees. We do it for all of our customers, whether they want it or not, because your employees are your biggest risk. Advanced endpoint detection. So, I mean, I've mentioned endpoint security or antivirus and stuff. If you're using a legacy antivirus, so any of the big names that we've heard about in the 90s or later, it's not good enough. So they're still using definition-based antivirus, which means they have to find something that was bad, put it on a list, and then block it. That process takes 2 weeks. And as I mentioned earlier, the average virus lasts 4 hours, so they're very far behind. Dark web research. I do this all the time. I can look up and see what bad information is out there about people on the dark web. Some people have very little, some people have a lot. But knowing what's out there allows you to make sure you can change those records so that people keep getting in. Patch management is really keeping your computer up to date, all the security stuff out there. I've talked about multi-factor probably a dozen times now. I'm a big fan of multi-factor. SIM and log management. So this is an advanced security process that usually larger organizations, it's really tracking every change that happens on the network. Mostly used both to identify unusual activity, but most of the time is used after the boom to figure out how something traversed your network and what they got to. Web security gateway. So this is a really good firewall. Your Comcast modem is not a firewall. Every bad actor out there can get past that. Mobile device security. So if you allow employees to use their mobile phones for work stuff, there's kind of 2 tiers, whether you're letting them use it for email and then whether you're letting them use it for data and apps and logging into 365, stuff like that. You definitely need to protect that. Encryption. So encryption's much easier than it used to be. Every laptop, any device that leaves your business's 4 walls should be encrypted, both at rest and in transit, which means when data's moving around or when it's just stored on your hard drive. And then backup and recovery. This is really what we use after a bad incident happens, right? So this could just be an employee that's malicious that wants to delete a bunch of stuff before they leave, or it could be that ransomware. So the nice thing about good backups is if you get ransomed and you have good backups, I don't care. All I have to do is restore your data to what it was yesterday. You might be down 24, 48 hours while that is happening, but you don't have to pay the ransom. Now, really good bad actors out there will figure out what you're using for backups and then delete all your backups before they ransom you. So you definitely need to make sure that somebody's doing test restores and knows that those are actually going. And a lot of the backup solutions out there now have what's called immutable backup, which means even if you delete it off the website where you can manage your backups, they have a copy of it that can't be deleted. If you have a solution out there, ask your provider. Otherwise, we can talk about what are good solutions out there. So feel free to download that. So that is all I have. I do have 2 more QR codes. So the first one is to schedule a call with me. It's free 30-minute talk. I'm a cybersecurity nerd. So if you want to ask me a few questions or you have a problem, anything, doors open. Don't feel bad about taking 30 minutes of my time. I really use this time to kind of keep up on what's new and changing. And then lastly, the bottom QR code, if you like this presentation, it'll take you to our company's Google reviews. Feel free to give us a little 5-star. Give us thanks for coming out today.